Hey, welcome to this Windows channel, and this is a few observations and an interesting question that has been asked by a user that made me go a bit on some reflection of the future of Microsoft Windows. I was telling you in the news bulletin that in the latest information, Microsoft Windows is now less than 10% of the revenue of Microsoft, which is, not a lot. And when you look at all the cloud stuff, that's really taking a lot of space. And this week we had a surprise move out of Microsoft, talking about how SQL Server will kind of merge also with Linux, and it's kind of what, something unthinkable many years ago. And the question that came forth is, well, if Microsoft Windows is such, a small portion now and gets smaller all the time, won't they abandon Windows eventually? And that's an interesting question. And here's my thought on this and why I don't think they will abandon Windows, um, at least not in the next, say 5 years at least, and maybe even 10 years. First of all the products that they do and even the cloud services require an operating system to work. And so the workings of Microsoft Windows, well, they also bring out, Windows Server and stuff like that that is used in the cloud stuff. So the, desktop version or the consumer type version of Windows and the business version of Windows, which is, what we have is, even though it's only 10%, the core and the part of that is also used in some of the cloud stuff, meaning that I don't think Microsoft would abandon Windows technically. But it is interesting because when people think of Microsoft, and still today, if you think of Microsoft, you're really thinking about Windows. Windows is the core stuff of Microsoft, in the head of everybody. Well, it's really not anymore. What I think is maybe that's the warning. That's where it comes from that Microsoft stated at some point last year, oh, this is the last version of Windows we're going to do. Because they've built Windows 10 in such a way that it's now a totally upgradable system. It's not anymore a Windows version that gets old, and because it gets old, you have to do something new if we want to have support for new devices and everything. Windows 10 is built in a way that it's actually upgradable all the time. You can add new features without adding new layers to it. They are just integrated into the actual workings of the Windows operating system. So I really don't think, anybody should be scared about Windows going away. It is the most used operating system of all. So we got to remember that on desktop, laptops, and so on. We got to also to understand one thing. One of the reasons why Windows also is getting real low in revenue, we got to remember that all the tablets, the phones, a lot of that stuff is working on something else. Android and iOS, and a few other stuff, like the Fire OS from Amazon and so on. But thing is, if you look at the market today, and computers like PC laptops and some tablets, yes, Windows is dominant. But if you look at the total operating system used in the world, Windows becomes really much less relevant than it used to be, because now we have Android that is a major player in mobile stuff, and iOS, is taking a chunk also out of that with the iPhone and the iPads. So Windows isn't the only thing. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Windows was Windows. Everybody had Windows, and then there were Macs, and there was Linux. And that's pretty much it. And Macs were very small, and Linux was almost, invisible. Linux today stays small, but you know, it's about in the latest stats, and I did verify that before making the video, before anyone tells me, oh yeah, it's much more than that. No, it isn't. It's 1.05% Linux total. So it's still a small player, but it's there, you know. And I think it's important that it stays available and that we continue working on Linux. I think it's a great project and it's interesting. Macs are still low, you know, even though they did, you know, manage to get a little higher. They were maybe 15 years ago, Macs were about, you know, 4 or 5%. We're about 8%. They kind of doubled, but it's still below 10%. It's still a small market compared to Windows, which is still very dominant in the type of operating system. So, you know, I think what we'll have is this Windows 10 environment upgraded and made better with time. And I think that is one of the reasons why, you know, there is less emphasis put on Windows that for Microsoft, but they still need to have an operating system for, you know, servers and stuff. So it's still a good idea to continue working on Windows versions. And I don't think that a world will evolve without Windows. But Microsoft does a good thing in not putting all its efforts into Windows, because, you know, in 5 or 10 years, what's going to be like? What's the market going to be like? You know, in 10 years, will I be using a laptop like I'm doing today, or will I have some kind of device that maybe won't even run Windows? Maybe I'll have the, you know, welcome to the Omega system channel. This is the thing now, you know. We don't really know, you know. It's really an evolving world with all the devices. I'd like to know what you guys think about the future of Windows, about the fact that Microsoft relies less and less on revenue from Windows. You know, what do you think about this future of Windows being, you know, maybe probably at the last version, but with, you know, upgrades of all sorts of internal, you know, apps and all sorts of, you know, devices now supported and stuff, and they're going to upgrade and make it, you know, different and better and upgrade it as technology goes by. I want to have your opinion on what you think of the future of Windows. If you enjoy my videos, please follow us, subscribe, give us thumbs up if you like the videos, and don't hesitate to leave comments and suggestions. It's always a pleasure to read them and to have them on the channel.